And we're live. Welcome back to LOOPcast. Today joined by Josh and Erica. And there's no shortage of news going on. We're going to be covering some of the most recent executive orders and specifically the federal freeze that was sent out from the Office of Management and Budget. We might get into the latest New York MAG picture, making conservatives look unbelievably cool. And I even have a little Catholic Moms Rule moment at the end of it.
Ooh, can't wait.
But of course, before we get into any of that, we got to talk about our favorite sponsor, Charity Mobile. Okay, it's time to make the switch. At the Pro-Life Phone Company, when you switch to Charity Mobile, 5% of your monthly plan price goes to the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice at no extra cost to you. It's everyday living made effortless giving. It's time to make the switch. With the same nationwide coverage as the major carriers, Charity Mobile has a variety of plans to fit every need, from basic talk and text options to unlimited data, and you can get up to 8 lines. They offer a range of phones, from simple flip phones to the latest 5G smartphones, or you can bring your own compatible device. Plus, there's no contracts, no termination fees, and a 30-day guarantee, so there's no risk in giving them a try. Charity Mobile has been in business for nearly 30 years, providing live US-based customer service by phone, chat, or email, so why not buy the way you believe and support causes that matter to you with everyday phone use. New customers can get a free phone, free activation, and free standard shipping, and a free travel charging kit. Just use the promo code LOOPcast. Again, that is promo code LOOPcast. Visit CharityMobile.com for all the details. Thank you so much to Charity Mobile for sponsoring today's episode. How are we feeling, guys?
Sounds good. Oh, great. I love Wednesday. I seriously think every Wednesday I wake up and I think it's Thursday. So it's always kind of a letdown. But I'm happy to be here with you.
Amen to
We're
that.
happy to have you.
Thanks.
Well, so when people said they were sending Trump to drain the swamp, it turns out it was not vibes, papers, or essays he was bringing. He decided it was time to freeze federal funding. And I need to start this section off with some clarification as it's, let's just say, maybe on purpose used by Democrats to scare people.
Oh, yeah.
And no surprise there. I mean, they got to do what they got to do. But
They got to protect the regime. They got to
Exactly.
protect their power.
So
Save
just
it.
to lay it on the line here, and then we get into the implications here. So in implementing President Trump's executive orders, the Office of Management and Budget has issued a guidance requesting that agencies temporarily pause, to the extent permitted by law, grant, loan, or federal financial assistance programs that are implicated by the president's executive orders. Any program not implicated by the president's executive order is not subject to the president's executive orders. Any program that provides direct benefits to individuals is not subject to pause. The guidance establishes a process for agencies to work with the Office of Management and Budget to determine quickly whether any program is inconsistent with the president's executive orders. A pause could be as short as a day. In fact, OMB has worked with agencies and has already approved many programs to continue even before the pause has gone into effect. And they will have up to February 10th to submit a breakdown of programs so that the Office of Management and Budget can approve if this is a good use of funds. Now, for people thinking about significance of this, we're talking about this covers $3 trillion a year, right? Federal aid is a humongous sum of money. And some of the reasons people are frustrated with the current use of said funds was brought up in the press conference done yesterday, the first press conference. I believe OMB found that we sent $50 million in condoms to Gaza.
In condoms.
And people are like, why would they, what's the problem here? I guess our diplomats think that the people in Gaza need to make love, not war. But I would just say, why is it that we're talking about $50 million of condoms? Like, this seems like a lot of money. Like, are there even 50 million people in this? But the point you need to remember is that when you're talking about federal aid, government money, it almost always is rewarding your friends. And so this is a gift to International Planned Parenthood. Like, that's why they're doing this. Like, whether or not they, need that many condoms in Gaza or not. Like, you don't get it. Like, that's not the point. They want to take your money, you taxpayers, they want to take your money and give it to people that are their friends.
Right.
And again, foreign aid, is sort of a joke. I'm not religiously against it in every principle, but for the most part, I have to agree with what Ron Paul said. Foreign aid is taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries.
100%. Yeah, I mean, and I think that the pause here, and you picked up on this, Tom, and I know we're going to go into this, but the reaction to the freeze on federal funding yesterday, and it was actually blocked by a judge yesterday afternoon.
Why
So
would you need to pause a
oh,
pause?
I know
Like,
we're pausing the
it's
pause
already
for a
paused. We can
moment,
debate it.
and obviously the Trump administration's challenging the pause on the pause.
Right.
But at the same time, the Democrats get out there and the mainstream media immediately drop the headline. This means that Medicaid has gone under, and sure enough, due to some outages somewhere, oh gosh, I wonder how this could have happened. On the same day the freeze is announced, the Medicaid portal goes down. And so people couldn't log in. Medicaid puts up a big red banner on its site, like something's wrong. You can't get into your automatic payment plan. And so, of course, the Democrats are like, Trump's banned Medicaid. And the headlines were ridiculous, especially since the guidance from the OMB that came out immediately after the announcement specifically said Medicaid is not affected, SNAP is not affected, student loans are not affected, all of these things. And yet, for the entire day, this narrative continued to be peddled by the mainstream media that Trump is killing people because he took Medicaid
They're
away.
lying. They know they're lying, and it's a
Yeah,
useful lie. So they'll do it.
exactly.
Can
Yeah.
I put on the tinfoil hat for a second here?
Oh, go for it. We love it.
Do I really think it's beyond someone, say a disgruntled federal employee that has to come back to work,
Mhm.
to mess with the Medicaid portal
No,
during this time
exactly.
and make
Exactly.
it seem like,
Yeah.
I mean, is that crazy to suggest that this
Totally
potentially was on the
coincidental.
inside?
I
Yeah.
doubt it.
Like, who
Yeah,
is running the Medicaid portal? Oh, one of the federal employees who 98% of whom we know donated to like Kamala Harris or some other
right.
far left candidate. So of course this was completely, fabricated. And the outrage and
And
oh my goodness,
shout out to
just
Rapid Response
shocking.
47 on Twitter. If
Yeah,
you guys are looking
hey.
for a new account to follow, they will be active. Very quickly responded to people like Chris Murphy saying that the Trump's government funding shutdown, Medicaid, cancer research, elementary schools is cataclysmic by itself. Very quickly stopped lying and then went right back to the OMB memo that was sent out. It's
Well,
predictable.
I mean, it's kind of radical, right, for Donald Trump to put this kind of a pause on foreign aid, right? I mean,
Yeah,
let's not forget in last year that USAID gave just under $2 million to the Asociación Lambda in Guatemala to pay for transgender surgeries. I mean,
Right.
what would we do if we dared pause that kind of stuff?
yeah. And what's missing in all this too is there's a legitimate process for OMB to overlook all federal aid going everywhere, whether or not it
Oversee.
aligns
Oversee it.
with the current administration's policies, right? So,
That's their job.
if you come forward and you're like, hey, we're paying for trans surgeries in Guatemala, does this align with the president's priorities? It's probably going to be a no. But if it is something legitimate and like, okay, this is good, it could just be quickly approved. But what people are missing about this is a majority of the country voted for radical change to what we're doing on right now. So maybe all of these Democrat kind of screeching from the politicians, it feels a little flat to me because people want to change from the status quo. People
How
don't.
much are they? How much is Donald Trump fighting his own people though? Because like this lawsuit was actually filed by Biden's chief of staff. I mean, like this just drives me kind of crazy. And in fact, the next thing we're going to talk about, right?
Mhm.
So the other thing that Donald Trump put into place was this option for a federal buyout of employees. Like, hey, I know I'm going to basically make you actually have to show up and work in office now, and a lot of you aren't going to like that because like some agencies are as few as 6% of the workers actually show up in these buildings, like totally vacant and empty. So he says, I'll give you a buyout. You just let me know by February 5th or 6th or whatever it is, and we will give you a runway of 8 months pay and benefits. And you just say, I'll take the buyout and I'll move on. I'll find another career. Right.
It's a great deal.
Phenomenal deal. And
Yeah.
some people on the conservative side are like, gosh, that's almost too nice. It's like,
I think so.
but we would save millions of dollars over the years by doing this. This would be huge.
Mhm.
And you kind of clear the runway on this stuff because like, how can federal employees say I'm being persecuted? You were just given an 8-month parachute, bro. But get this, the deep state, there's these, again, 99% of bureaucrats vote for Democrats, right? So there were 2 federal employees who actually were planning a lawsuit suggesting that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, head of the executive branch, does not have the authority to email 2 million federal employees. You're like,
What?
whoa. what? Are you out of your mind? Like, it just, to me, so egregious. Like, how dare he? He should send an email to the head of each agency, and the agency should sit on it and park it and put, give me a break. These people, oh my goodness, we have so much dead weight. This lady posted this video online. It was like a 4-minute video. It's too long for here. Talking about how like 80% of the work is done by less than 20% of the employees at the federal government. And like so many people, they phone in stuff. They come in. She's like, they come in. I come into the office at 7:30, and this guy has been here since 6:30. He's taking a nap. He's sleeping. Another guy comes up. I mean, it's so little work being done by these people. It's so much dead weight. It's like, why are we paying billions of dollars of just wasted time? Get them out of here.
Someone in the chat picked up. Yeah, someone in the chat picked up on it. She said, sorry, I can't see your name. Kate, it's a she. Elon did this in his companies in 2022. Yeah, another deep stater on Twitter freaked out because the title of Trump's memo was A Fork in the Road. And apparently that was the same title of the memo that Elon sent to everyone at Twitter when he walked in with the sink. Remember that? And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, Elon and Trump used the same time. Like, yeah. Because Elon's helping him to do this. This is okay. But they were like, this is clearly shows that Elon's running the government. It was like total.
Well, did they find a way to relate it back to Nazi somehow?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Everyone's a Nazi. Mm-hmm.
I do want to note, and I've wanted to bring this up on a few episodes. It didn't make my Twilight Zone, but Drew Holden on Twitter brought up a hilarious treatment of the federal workers. The difference between Politico's coverage of when people in the private sector lose their jobs versus when the government is getting threatened here. I don't think it sums it up any than this. So, Politico, I am terrified. Workers describe dark mood inside federal agencies. I would love to leave, but I don't know where I'd go, said one staffer.
I don't have marketable skills.
Wait for it. Coal miners wary of a greener future.
Oh my gosh.
Amid efforts to reskill miners in the East, money and mindset are a problem.
Remember when Biden told the coal miners that they should just learn to code? Or maybe that was Obama. Josh, who said that? Learn to code.
I don't think it was Biden, no. I mean,
I think it was Obama.
Oh, it's Obama?
Yeah.
They should just learn to code. I'm like, well, maybe the federal employees can now learn to code or something.
Yeah, going to need to learn something new. I mean, even just the statement of, I would like to leave, but I don't know where I'd go. Plenty of people deal with that in the private
sector. That few marketable skills.
I mean, right. Are you just saying you can't be employed elsewhere? Like, that's kind of a problem. So yeah, we're kind of, we're done with that. And so, yes, Erica did mention up just to wrap this section that a federal judge did pause it, but they didn't rule on its legality. So basically it was just, we're going to pause and we're going to review it on Monday. It's not saying that anything Trump's doing is illegal or is bad. It's just a response after seeing the lawsuits to be, okay, we're going to take a look at this on Monday. So, and someone brought up Meals on Wheels here in the chat. That actually was brought up in the press conference. No, that's not affected. Direct aid to individuals is not affected. Plus, that's $5 million. That's less than money we spend on condoms to Gaza. So it's
the Democrats are totally Saul Alinsky about this, though. They're not like, how can we do this pause? How else are we going to pay for condoms in Gaza? How else are we going to pay for transgender surgeries in Guatemala? They're always like, but Meals on Wheels and your Medicare at risk. Like, oh, well, that's not actually true. Doesn't matter. Let's run with it anyway.
It is. It's
because they lie through their damn teeth.
I had an insane interaction on Twitter. So, okay, because the new press conference was great. I enjoyed every second of it. Imagine a press secretary that speaks with clarity, without a binder, knows everyone's name, and invites all questions. Novel concept that we haven't had for 4 years. But there was a moment where she said the aid in Gaza thing, like, okay, $50 million in condoms going. OMB found that for last year. I went to the 2023 USAID report on how much the United States spends on contraceptions for the world. And I threw it up instantly. And as soon as she said it, I was like, oh, maybe my wording could have been clearer, but basically I was like, is it reasonable to assume that based on this 2023 report that the United States would be spending that kind of money on contraceptives? And the answer, 2023 USAID, in total, 2023, and some of the examples are male condoms, oral contraceptives, IUDs. This is for the world. The United States spent $60 million in 2023 on all of this to the world. Now, what people were mad about was that nowhere in this said specifically it was being sent to Gaza. I said, let's all zoom out here for a second, take bird's eye view. What is the appropriate amount of money the United States should be spending on sending condoms anywhere?
Anywhere.
The answer is
0.
zero. Like, you guys are outraged about the wrong thing. And is it reasonable to say that last year OMB found that we were spending money, significant amounts of money, sending contraceptives to Gaza? The answer is yes, based on this.
Why can't they spend their own money on rubbers? Why do I have to pay
Yeah.
for it? In
Right.
fact, I'd rather encourage people to have children. Like, we have a baby bust problem
all over the world,
Well,
right?
even if we want to set aside the moral and ethical, quite possibly insurmountable obstacles to even just doing this, because who are the people attached to this initiative? George Soros, Bill Gates. It's all the worst of the worst. Put that aside for just 1 second. That is priority 1,000, maybe 1,000,001 for America right now, is sending condoms abroad. Like, America first.
Got to make sure I get condoms to Gaza.
Yeah.
Did you see what they were using them for too? Hamas
Yeah, they
was
used them as
using
bombs.
as bombs. They were using the condoms to create bombs.
So
because it turns out radical Muslims don't believe in contraception. You dimwits, read your Quran for heaven's sake.
Well, don't, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
don't.
Touch this on that, yeah. But no, I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
So is it reasonable?
I repeat my claim that we need this Trump revolution of common sense, because the fact of the matter is the American people have suffered these indignities for decades now, and finally we're having someone who's listening to us and doing something about it, saying, why are we paying for rubbers in Gaza? This is dumb. Why are we paying for transgender surgeries in Guatemala? This is dumb. We're going to stop doing it. Like, and everyone's like, what? Like, Republicans normally would, rail against this, but then impotently do nothing about it.
Right.
Trump's like, well, we should stop it, right? And everyone's like, what? That'll get people upset.
That'll stop the gravy train.
So what? Like, this is stupid. We should not be doing this.
All right.
And so I'm glad we have a president that is willing to take the heat and have a lot of people scream and yell at him, when in fact, I'm agreeing with what you're doing. Thank you.
So speaking of common sense, next section. President Donald J. Trump enforces overwhelmingly popular demand to stop taxpayer funding of abortion. Quick readout on exactly what this means. So this week, Trump released an executive order which will enforce the Hyde Amendment, which will actually end the use of federal taxpayer dollars to fund or promote elective abortion. This order rescinds 2 of the Biden administration's executive orders, which imposed a whole-of-government effort to promote and fund abortion and to politicize enforcement of the FACE Act, and which recategorized abortion as, quote, healthcare in order to provide taxpayer funding for elective abortions. He also reinstated the Mexico City policy, which would stop the use of federal taxpayer dollars for abortion overseas. He also issued a rule preventing Title X taxpayer funding from subsidizing the abortion industry and stopped the federal funding of fetal tissue research. Wow.
This is what I voted for, because these kinds of measures will actually save lives. Literally, we are saving the lives of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of infants right here. And for everyone who, look, Trump is not perfect on abortion. He's not a devout Catholic. Oh, neither was the alternative that we just suffered under for 4 years, where we just dished out and funded Planned Parenthood International with our taxpayer dollars. This is a no-brainer for the Trump administration. These are decisively pro-life measures that he just put in place. He promised he would restore Mexico City and the Hyde Amendment on the campaign trail, and this is promises kept right here. I think the Michael New, good researcher, college professor of yours, he put out a study of how many lives did the Hyde Amendment actually save over the last so many years, and something upwards of 200,000, it's estimated, if not more. So this is life-saving stuff right here. So big kudos to Trump.
And I guess the big push now and hope is that we'll get DOJ, like they had mentioned, to talk about cutting off funding to Planned Parenthood. And maybe the only way we get that pushed over the top is to appeal to the Republicans. Like, look, why would you subsidize an industry that happens to spend millions of dollars electing your opponents? Like, that's really stupid. Like, maybe we have to just appeal to politicians on their own self-interest. Like a lot of the Republicans are pro-life, and they're willing to cut it anyway.
Josh, dig into that for a second. What do you mean endorsing opponents? Are you saying that Planned Parenthood funds campaigns?
Well, I mean, here's the thing: Planned Parenthood, you know, they're like the top dog in abortion. They get so much money from federal funding that underwrites everything that they do, and funds are fungible. Now, the money that they spend on political campaigns doesn't come from taxpayer funding, of course. But they're such a behemoth, and they make so much money, and they can get their message out and convince everyone in the country we're the number one thing for abortion. So when they come around asking for money for their political campaigns, the people go, "Gosh, I know you. You're a good voice. You've used all that money that you got from the government to promote abortion. I'm going to help you on your political side." So it's not like they're taking taxpayer money and trying to elect candidates with that money. I'm not accusing them of that. I'm just saying that their entire business is underwritten by the taxpayer. $500 million from the federal government, and then local governments give tons of money, like Pritzker in Illinois. The politicians of Massachusetts, New York, they give tons of money to these guys. And so they have open coffers. They can hire the best marketing team and everything. And so that when they do want to raise money for politicians, boy, they have got a slick machine ready to roll, and they really do make a difference. It's why is it that Democrats who are pro-life are extinct in the Democratic Party? Because they hunted them down. Like Planned Parenthood hunted them down. Like Dan Lipinski, we did our best. I mean, I don't even agree with Dan Lipinski on a lot of things, but we came to bat for him because he was a pro-life Democrat, and they snuffed him out because the pro boards, it's a religion. They're so dedicated to this. 40% of Democrats are pro-life. No, they're not anymore. Zero. So I mean, Planned Parenthood, if we could just cut off their funding, and again, there's going to be people in the Senate where that's going to be a tough vote because the two liberal Republican pro-abort senators, Snow and Murkowski, Collins and Murkowski, they're not going to vote to cut funding. So you're already down to 51. You lose any other Republican who at least says he's pro-life, then it's gone. So it's a tough one. And in the House, you have like a 3-seat majority or 4-seat majority. So that would go down to the wire. Like you're telling me there aren't a few Republicans in liberal districts that Planned Parenthood can't pay off. So it's going to be tight. It's going to be tough. But also, and then the abortion pill is going to be another one. We get another big.
Got to give some credit to the USCCB. They've been in hot water recently. They did come out and praise this. I believe the bishop from Toledo, Daniel E. Thomas, chairman of the USCCB,
secretary for the pro-life committee.
Yep, came out and praised it, which is worthy of praise. That's why it's funny you're mentioning these battles we have ahead, but I have to say at this point, Donald J. Trump has been the most pro-life president of my lifetime in terms of effectiveness.
So there's no question. I mean, he overturned Roe v. Wade. That's why I think some pro-lifers who are very concerned about casting a ballot for him, like Lila Rose, I thought it was kind of a risky gamble. At the edge, she turned around and endorsed him because my thought is, my worry is that you isolate yourself, and he says, "Well, I'm going to win without you. Then I don't need to do anything for you." And then we have someone in office who turns a cold shoulder to us.
But I just,
we do need to work on it. But the thing is, sometimes people think, well, we have what is true and right, therefore we should just do it. And I have to tell you, we live in a republic. We still have to convince the people about our positions. So like this idea, like a pill, and it's still sort of a mystery for a lot of people. I'm like, well, actually, let's talk about the science here. Let's talk about what this pill does to you. The percentage of women that end up having to go to the hospital is a lot higher than you think. So this is not the great solution you think it is. We need to start talking like that rather than, well, we should get rid of this pill. Of course we should get rid of this pill. We should get rid of abortions too. But we have to actually do the hard work of showing people the science and convincing them this is really a bad solution. And any other medicinal thing approved by the FDA would be pulled off the shelves if it did this kind of stuff. So why is it that this one has an exception? Oh, because of politics? That doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound like it has the best interests of women at heart. That's the kind of stuff that we need to say.
Yeah, the mifepristone pill actually already came up at the RFK hearings, which are going on right now. As we're live, they're going on. I watched the first 45 minutes, and it already came up from the Democrats. Like, mifepristone is perfectly safe. And what will you know, this is
What did
terrible.
he say anything, or is he kind of?
He was not allowed to speak yet. This was where he comes
The
out and he has
opening
to listen to
statements,
someone.
right?
Yeah, opening statements. He had to just listen to the guy harangue him. But I think
I
it's going
know.
to come up multiple times in the hearings already.
These Senate confirmation hearings are so
Oh.
laborious. I'm like, are you sure, Brian? You really want to submit yourself to this?
It was great hearing Wyden wax poetic about how great Big Pharma is and how everyone should trust them and love them and give all their money to them.
No.
Well, if you want to go check his funding sources, you'll find some interesting things. So anyway.
Fun to see Democrats glorify billion-dollar corporations because they're for the little guy. Who will speak and defend these billion-dollar corporations, Tom?
Well,
Someone has
to. We're gonna have some great clips on Friday from all the RFK. He has 2 full days of hearings, so there's gonna be some juicy stuff in there. Really interesting.
It's must-watch TV.
Friday show.
But we still have to cover a lot of things. It's been flooding the zone, obviously, on the Trump. But the next executive order, fact sheet, President Donald J. Trump ensures military excellence and readiness. Now,
oh boy,
what does this look like in practice? Okay, so the executive order will require the Secretary of Defense to do the following: update all Department of Defense medical standards to ensure they prioritize readiness and lethality, take action to end the use of invented and identification-based pronouns in the Department of Defense. The executive order also prohibits males from using or sharing, sleeping, changing, or bathing in facilities designed for females.
Yes.
The executive order revokes Biden administration executive order 14004. For anyone curious what that is, it's for accommodating gender identity in the military to the detriment of military readiness and unit cohesion. Another good part from the Q&A that I'll share here, which talk about a revolution of common sense. Consistent with the military mission and longstanding DoD policy, expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service.
Yep.
Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required of a service.
Could not be better written. That is majestic.
Was perfect. Who wrote this one? This was so well written.
I should add, as Mary Margaret Allahan noted, when the Obama administration conducted its 2016 study on trans-identifying service troops, it found that service members who underwent gender transition surgeries would not be deployable for about 238 days or 34 weeks. Like that right there, it's like, you're not time out. No, why would we pay for this? And then why would we give you like 2/3 of a year off? This is
you get
absolute insanity.
The insanity is, and then pretend that somehow makes us more lethal or prepared.
Right.
Yeah, better. It makes us better.
Somehow. Mm-hmm. So it's like a double strength. I'll never forget.
Lethalness is our strength in the military, you know?
So I'll never forget.
The ability to kill people is our strength.
I've thought about this, Josh. So I'm a Survivor fan. I enjoyed the original episodes back in the day. Season 7, Pearl Island's probably my favorite. Shout out Rupert, Indianapolis. Wow. That being said, I made the mistake of watching one after season 40. And I think they're actually getting better now, but I remember they kind of, how do I call it? Like Make-A-Wish or like sob storied it. Like instead of focusing on the gameplay, they were focusing on the individuals. And just to think about how ridiculous this is for a second, sure enough, they trot out someone who's transgender, someone who's medically transitioned. And the concept of Survivor is you get dropped off on an island with basically nothing and have to survive. Now, back to the point of this being an artificial setup, if you're transgender, you have to, if you go through those medical procedures, you basically have to be on a catheter. Like the medicine required to sustain your artificial lifestyle doesn't exist on an island. And so sure enough, within 2 days, they're like, hey, you can't be on this island because your medication needs to be refrigerated. Right. It's not sustainable. Dependent. And they did this whole sob story about how brave this person is for even going in the first place. And everyone's crying, seeing him off. I can't remember if it's a man or woman. But I was just thinking about how
It was
ridiculous
an
that
opportunity
was.
for them to congratulate themselves, and Hollywood took it. Amazing.
Yeah, I know.
Mm.
But so just think about how ridiculous that was. And this is a reality TV show. This isn't like Afghanistan. Like imagine dropping a soldier off in combat and then having to sustain that is just from a medical perspective insane. Not to mention expensive, but dangerous for the person there, dangerous for the people that are around. So when you talk about a revolution of common sense, this is step one. We need lethal men and women, and I don't even say women in combat, but men in combat, women who are there as well, to be in situations where they can be lethal. They're not hurting each other. Specifically, the men and women spaces thing too. That's insane. There's just so many opportunities.
Well, Rachel
for
Levine's an
problems.
admiral. We should send her into war, right?
Oh my gosh, no.
It's a he.
So,
Rachel Levine is a he.
this will
But
not
it's
be
hard.
tolerated.
I think like what this and then the end of DEI under Pete Hegseth is really revealing is just how divorced from reality our military became under the Biden administration. That we would have these, you would have men and women coming back from combat situations in Afghanistan where they've been under fire. They've been throwing themselves on grenades for each other. They're a cohesive unit. They get back to their military base in the U.S. for some recovery, and they get a lecture on how the white guys hate the black guys unconsciously. I mean, this is the divorce from what actually goes on in combat under the military. There's a great piece in the Free Press today, just kind of digging into what these men and women were experiencing when they came back from combat and they were forced to undergo all this, you have to call Admiral Levine a she now and stuff like that, that it's so contrary to reality. And you're just like, am I in the Twilight Zone? Is this even real? And now that we're getting some restoration of common sense and it feels like a revolution, you're like, well, gosh, we were so far gone that this feels like, whoa, what a concept that we're not going to have men pretending to be women in these military situations. It's so
like
refreshing.
for all these things, like transgenders, soldiers, the Biden administration done, like, promoting transgender surgery on kids, promoting abortion at every turn, like having healthcare.gov, reproductiverights.gov, whatever, all these different things that the Biden administration spending money absolutely, completely, and totally recklessly, like, and then like, okay, avian flu, like, let's just kill every chicken. I mean, like
Oh my
the
gosh.
extreme measures that the Biden administration would do on everything. You're like, honestly, if you wanted to destroy a country, could you have done better than Biden?
I don't think I could have planned it better.
I mean, honestly, like
Well, you're saying crazy.
Stop operating like these people are in good faith. Like they are truly wicked people. Like, but I don't understand why they're doing this, because you're assuming that they're good people just with some wrong ideas. Like, what if they're wicked? What if they're really wicked, evil people?
It actually does really, because I was writing down a list too, same great minds, Josh, but think about like we used ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, to facilitate illegal immigration. We used our healthcare apparatus to kill babies and to mutilate children.
Right.
We used our military as an opportunity to become less prepared for war. It's not just that it was crazy. It was as if someone did intentionally the opposite thing, but then affirmed very 1984 style that they manipulated the
Everything
language.
is awesome.
It is. It's Orwellian.
That the opposite of the thing is actually the thing. And maybe that's why this is just all of these things are so common sense, because they actually are implementing the things that they're saying they're doing, instead of saying they're doing something and then doing the opposite, but then forcing you to somehow agree that, this is good or that it is accomplishing the goal that it is.
But
So,
I agree.
But
I think we just got to keep hammering this point home. I mean, like, again, from everything from soup to nuts, A to Z, everything that the Biden administration was designed to do was to divide us, was to harm us in every way. Again, in Trump's first week in office, they're literally arresting hundreds of people every day who are violent, vicious criminals, like rapists, child rapists, thugs, murderers. Like, and we knew where they were. It's not like
we had the list, and they're using
we had a crack team of
right.
We're going to find these people. Like a long CSI thing. Like, dude, we have their names and addresses. Like, we knew where they lived. How do we allow this to happen? Again, I point to it. I feel like people in the future are going to look back and say, boy, the good people of the United States, were actually exceptionally patient with their own
Yes.
government that tried to harm them in so
Mhm.
many ways, allowing fentanyl to pour across the border, thugs to pull across the border, all these things that are being done to us. And we're actually being very patient and still working within the system.
Well, Josh,
Yeah.
another win.
Yes.
From the White
Yes.
House, protecting
Yes.
children from chemical and surgical mutilation. Now, again, quick read out on this. Across the country today, medical professionals are maiming and sterilizing a growing number of impressionable children under the radical and false claim that adults can change a child's sex through a series of irreversible medical interventions. This is dangerous and will be a stain on our nation's history, and it must end.
Yes.
Countless children soon regret that they have been mutilated and begin to grasp the horrifying tragedy that they will never be able to conceive children of their own or nurture their children through breastfeeding. Moreover, these vulnerable use medical bills may rise throughout their lifetimes as they are often trapped with lifelong medical complications, a losing war with their own bodies, and tragically sterilization. Accordingly, it is the policy of the United States that it will not fund, sponsor, promote, assist, or support the so-called transition of a child from one sex to another, and it will rigorously enforce all laws that prohibit or limit these destructive and life-altering procedures.
Yes. Sanity. A losing war with their own bodies. That is so well put. And I think that this whole statement it is so, again, whoever's writing these, so well articulated what's at stake, that this is not like, oh, we're trying to like erase trans people or kill trans children and blah 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 blah. This is to save the children, just like the focus of all the ICE and the immigration reforms and the immigration enforcement needs to be, we want those children found and saved. And all the focus of ending our PEPFAR and our exporting abortion across the world, focus on the children. And this is, I love this statement so much. This is great. And I hope it can be effective all over. I also loved that it includes a measure for young people who have been harmed by the adults in their lives through this to get restitution later on. They can file complaints and lawsuits. So great measure. I hope it is effective. And I hope that Congress can act on this as well so we can get something permanent so that when the Democrats come back into the White House, it's not just automatically reversed and we get this back and forth and whiplash. We need Congress to take the initiative and actually get something permanent done here.
Amen to that.
Come on, guys.
Not tired of winning yet. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the first press conference of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
It was done by Caroline Leavitt, 27, Catholic, the youngest press secretary ever. So a couple interesting elements to this press conference. One of them, she immediately opens up with first press briefing, immediately invited bloggers, TikTokers, podcasters, and social media influencers to apply for press credentials as they will be
Well, there's your
welcomed.
chance, Pogo.
Yeah, did you apply, Tom?
Okay, so I'm happy to report she couldn't even finish saying the URL. I had applied. It was really easy. And yeah, shoot or shoot. As you can see, interested in joining a future White House press briefing, share your information below. I did it so fast it would make your head spin. Next, Tom in the Wild video, me sneaking into a White House press briefing.
Yes.
It looked rowdy in there. It was packed too. So a few immediate observations. I watched the entire thing. It was delightful. It was about an hour long. One, she didn't have a binder, and I believe she's on record saying, "My head is my binder."
Oh my gosh.
She knew every reporter by name. She called on people from the back row, which you're saying, what? People from the back row weren't called on? Yeah. So the last administration, and part of this open to non-traditional media, she unrevoked the press passage of 440 different people that were banned from the press room because potentially they were trying to inquire in the mental facilities of the previous president. I remember they had to submit questions beforehand. She would only call on certain people. She wouldn't have answers for them. It was like a night and day. We talk about a revolution of common sense. This was one of them.
It was great. Yeah, she went full Amy Coney Barrett on that with the. I think she had 4 pieces of paper. There was a shot of from behind her and looking at her podium and then out on the crowd, and it was like 4 pieces of paper for her to refer to as notes, and that was it. Contrast to KJP with the giant binder. And KJP, who spent her first press conference listing all the intersectionality boxes that she ticked off and why she was so historic to be there in the first place. And Caroline's just like, all right, let's get to the drones. That's what then people want to know about. And it turns out, in fact, the drones, which she did make the announcement, were from the FAA after all, and then like copycat private people right here in the United States.
Dude, I knew
And
it.
Biden administration lied about it.
Absolutely. We know nothing about them. Guess who runs the FAA? The executive branch, the Biden administration. Yeah, they lied
Almost
about
like
it.
they were lying.
Dude, what a great. I think she's just like the golden age of America has become.
She said
Trump
that.
is back, and then she's like, the drones are us. She basically just tossed it out like, yep, that drones they were lying about. Yep, they were us, the FAA and copycats. All right, let's get to it.
Moving on.
My personal favorite moment, though, which it's going to be a good 4 years. Here we go.
Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
You made a point of going with the worst first. They all have a criminal record?
And welcome to the briefing
If they
room.
broke our nation's laws, yes, they are criminal. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be a good 4 years.
Common sense.
It's perfectly legitimate to ask what percentage of them had additional crimes. But she's right to stress, yeah, they broke our law. And that's the exact same kind of exchange that Tom Holman had with AOC last year. And she's like, they're not criminals. Like, yeah, they violated the law, illegal entry into our country. That's violating the law.
definition.
She goes, not if they're claiming asylum. And he's like, you do that at the port of entry. That's where you do that.
Right.
It's a revolution of
New
common sense.
dawn. It's a new day. Yeah, I loved it when she pulled out the chickens too, because another reporter comes at her and he's like, "When can we see the price of eggs come down?" I mean, this was just like Margaret and JD Vance, where she's like, "When will the bacon be cheaper?" And the guy's like, "Why are the eggs so expensive?" And Trump promised eggs would be affordable.
But
And
see, this is what it gets to. In 2016, when the Democrats lost, they're like, how could we lose to this buffoon? Like, we're promoting abortion and trans stuff all the time, and this is wonderful. But must be the emails. That's why we lost. That's why Hillary lost. The emails, which of course the emails was she was using a private server so she could hide her pay-for-play access for all these things. That's what she was doing. It's not just her emails, for crying out loud.
Right.
Oh, did you wipe your server? Oh, with what, a cloth? I mean, these people are so full of baloney. And then this is what it's become this time. Oh, eggs. 80% of American people don't think we should have transgender surgeries on minors. 90% of people think we should not, that we should obviously expel people who are violent criminals. And you guys are so radical that you're like, no, we got to keep rapists and thugs in this country. How dare we deport them? And yes, we should have transgender surgeries on kids. And it's like, oh, but I guess we lost because of eggs. Really? I mean, yes. Your inflationary policies, you're making energy extremely expensive and spending money worse than a bunch of drunken sailors didn't help. But that's how that's their takeaway from the election. Eggs. So every question for them is, what are you going to do about eggs? You're so concerned about eggs. Eggs.
Or you shut down all
People are
Medicare and
nuts.
old people are dying.
Getting Josh going today, baby.
Let's do it. Do we have any others that are gonna like?
we're
really
talking-
set Josh off?
I got
This
one.
is a-
I got one.
Oh,
Don't worry.
you got one?
The problem is
Okay.
these people have eggs on their face. That's the problem.
They don't like it.
I just I was talking to Rosie before the show. I was like, I didn't realize how much of content that I choose for the show is just purely to get Josh riled up. Like, it's just a pure Josh power play, and that's what makes the show so great. But I will say, before we move on, Democrats definitely in disarray. Their latest attempts to attack what's going on right now, we have from the Democrats' Twitter, and if you're wondering the date on this, this is 1/27/2025. This is not from 2008.
Literally 2 days ago.
Donald Trump is putting together an administration focused on Wall Street, not Main Street.
Like, it's not even believable.
Biden doing?
These are the people that want tax cuts for people who live in rich zip codes, the SALT stuff. And they're like, wait a minute. What about these, billion-dollar pharmaceutical companies? What about them? Like,
Exactly.
I just think someone set this off their flip phone. I don't know. I haven't heard this in a long time. I was just doing, and then the other one that's getting a lot of buzz is this New York magazine cover. It's called "The Cruel Kids Table," out late with the young right as they contemplate cultural domination. And if you take a look, it is for the audio listeners, well dressed, happy, probably notably white for the reason they chose this. People at a party during the inauguration. And again, I think JD Vance is like they're trying to make us look as cool as possible.
Yeah.
And I think they accomplished this.
This picture, I mean, you're right. Joyful, happy, gorgeous people in their 20s. Like any 20-year-old looks at this and goes, I want to be at this so-called cruel kids table. But it's important to note in this photograph that you show all these ridiculously gorgeous, young men and women, that they cropped everything. So in this photo, they cropped out 3 black people in the photo.
Yeah.
Like just to the left of that girl, there's 2 black guys. And then in the word table, that the BL covers up the face of another black guy.
Yeah.
So it makes, and then they complain, it's all a bunch of white people. That's because you cropped all the blacks out of the photo because it doesn't go with these people are so full of, what?
Oh my gosh.
And I have to say, just an interesting point in all this. And first off, yes, I'm jealous. I wish I was at this party.
Yeah,
Maybe they
this
are
is
the cool
fun.
kids that look like a lot of fun. But someone pointed out that we have, and sorry, there's a little bit of nudity, unfortunately. How liberals present conservatives versus how conservatives present themselves. We have the cool kids table on the left. Then on the right, we have this like weird conservatives kind of pin-up calendar deal going on.
Yeah, that was from that calendar that like Riley Gaines was on last year.
Yeah, love Riley. Nothing against people personally partaking, but it was interesting for me to observe that the left basically tried their best to make a case against these young people being villains and made them look cool and beautiful and like happy. And then,
And hip and exciting, right?
Conservatives are coming out with stuff like this to be conservative. Look at this magazine of like hot people, basically. And
if you need a pinup, at least make sure the girl votes Republican. And you're like, well,
I think it's worth taking a step back to understand the opportunity that we have here as a dominating coalition right now. JD Vance actually specifically, I believe, spoke to Congress on ways to ensure that we have this majority coalition before. But to the point of people smarter than I don't think people want to see like conservative art or don't want to see like Christian movies. They want to see good movies and good art, beautiful art, and that beauty is transcendent. And it could be a good opportunity for us to think now about how do we build up our institutions to produce beauty when it comes to dress, when it comes to architecture, when it comes to worship, even when it comes to government buildings, as we mentioned before, or government services. And it's funny that the left tried their best to make it look bad, but then they ended up kind of capturing something beautiful, like young people enjoying being out, having a good time, the joy of winning, that kind of thing. And
I guess I want to just accent your point there a little bit. I agree with what you're saying. Like, I think too often, both conservatives or in this smaller Catholic submarket, we try to do movies or documentaries or shows or whatever a little too much on the nose. It's like, this is why we got to get everything in there, and the characters have to make these big monologues and this and that. It's like, hold on a second. What we really want is good art, good stories. Back when the country was actually by default already, like good in nature. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want like it's got to be overtly Catholic, this or that. We just want really, really good art, really, really good music, really, really good shows. And, when Christianity, Western civilization, back when that was the default, that would be, I think, the better approach.
Absolutely.
Thoughts, Erica?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before with the Pixar phenomena, right? Like, why were the early Pixar movies so good. And there's something that I enjoy watching with my kids. It's not because like the characters were Christians and like preaching during the at all, but they communicated something true about the way humans interact and what makes a good life, right? And a noble action because they focused on a good story that was time tested, true, good versus evil, good triumphs over evil. When did Pixar start to lose it? Well, when they sold out to Disney and they stopped focusing on the stories and they started focusing on didactic checking off of intersectionality boxes, right? That was when it went down, and it can recover again. There's a movement, a swing back in the other direction. And again, these were great movies for kids, and they continue to be great classics for families to watch, not because we're falling into that didacticism that we see from the woke left, but because it was just focused on what's true and good and beautiful, like you said, Tom, what's transcendent about the human experience. So,
But I just want to go
100%.
back to 1 second, though, back to the cover. I
Yep.
do think it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting that, like, why is it that a bunch of these young kids at like a crypto inaugural ball or whatever it was that they did, and they just look so happy and gorgeous, why is it that the New York Magazine is like it's stuck in their craw? Like, what? Why is this
It bothered
the
them.
cruel kids table? Why are they getting
Yeah.
so mad? And somebody made the point. It's like, okay, now, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting the truth, and the truth is, after all this talk, it was just petty high school social resentments that have floated to the surface from a bunch of liberal theater kids. It's not like you guys are really caring about addressing, racism or injustice. Okay. Yeah. Now we know what's really going on.
The cruel kids table.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, Erica, I think to your point, like when did Pixar movies start getting bad? And we've talked about it so many times this episode, return to common sense. Like natural law is written on all of our hearts, you actually don't really decide what makes you happy and fulfilled at the end of the day. It's actually a condition that we all experience together. So when Pixar movies stopped reflecting reality, for example, with bizarre trans characters or stories that didn't actually speak on the human experience or speak to the human heart in a way that natural law does, it stopped being good. And so that, I think with all of this, it's like things need to reflect reality because truth is truth. And then goodness and beauty comes from the truth. Living in the truth is good. And that's the big downfall here. And so if we have an opportunity to like start building off of the truth, live in reality, a lot of good can come from it, I think. So
100%.
I'm excited for the future. One more thing to rile up Josh two more things. Sorry, I might go a little over here. One, is Pete Buttigieg going to be a Michigan senator?
Sir.
He's practically my neighbor. He lives up here in northern Michigan. That would be terrible.
So
I
Gary,
sure as heck
Gary
hope
Peters.
not.
Gary Peters is not running for re-election in battleground Michigan. Josh Politics Nerd take
Mayor
Buttigieg.
Pete.
Are you going to get
This is going to be one of the most expensive Senate races. We'll see. This is the first time where, since the direct election of senators here in Michigan, where you have an open race for governor and an open race for the Senate seat in the same year. No incumbents on either one of them. So it is a lot of jockeying going on. Like what conservatives and Republicans on one side thinking, do I run for governor? Do I run for Senate? And same thing on the Democratic side. So, Jocelyn Benson's our Secretary of State. She's psycho. She's thinking about running for governor, but then that gives someone else a chance. Oh, I'll run for Senate. So it's going to be very expensive to try to get any TV ads in Michigan next year. It's going to be an all-out, drag-out fight. And, it's up to, Trump, his policies. If he can make life measurably better for people, then, hey, maybe he can go against the midterm slump. Usually the party in office, in power in the White House, usually loses seats in the midterm elections. That would mean, if that were true, that you would expect Democrats to capture both the House and the Senate in 2026, because the razor thin majority in each House is so small. That's why Republicans realize they need to do everything they can to have bold action to try to turn the economy around, get prices going back down, and get people happy, and that could make a big difference. So,
Right.
if some of getting rid of the EV mandate, that'll help people in Michigan, and Trump, his support will be crucial. So if he's out on the campaign trail in Michigan, the people in Michigan do like Trump. He's won Michigan twice now.
Sir.
Has
anyone investigated Mayor Pete didn't he get like billions of dollars to build EV charging stations, and they built 2?
Oh my gosh, it's true.
Where's that
42
money?
billion. 42 billion.
Trust me,
Take a look.
Republicans will hammer him on that if he's the nominee. So.
Yep.
And hey, the chat is speaking. We've interrupted Erica way too much today. I'm really sorry. I'm trying to keep it tight because we go over and people have other functions here at Catholic Vote, which is tough for me. I wish we could do 2 hour
Guys,
shows every
I'm
day.
all right. I'm okay, chat. I'm having a hard time closing my thoughts today, so
Here's what I'll do, Erica.
appreciate it though.
This
Go
one's for
for it.
you. All right.
Okay,
we riled
bring
up
it.
Josh today. We're gonna rile you up now. I don't understand what's going on here. The Vatican walks back mass obligation guidance. Can you please explain this to me?
Goodness. Okay. So are you kidding me? All right. So this is from the Pillar, and I read the actual statement from the Vatican. So you might remember that this year Immaculate Conception fell on fill in the blank, Josh. Immaculate Conception was on a Sunday last year, right? And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, if we move the feast to Monday, do we have to go to Mass? And you remember the U.S. bishops, certain bishops excused the obligation. Others said that there was. The Vatican itself stepped in last year and said, actually, December 9th is a holy day of obligation. And then, of course, some bishops here dispensed that obligation in their own diocese, which they are allowed to do. Then, just
That
yesterday...
seems like a simple solution.
Simple solution, because bishops, it turns out, are the princes of their own diocese. Just let them do it. Okay. But then, just yesterday, on the Feast of Thomas Aquinas, no less, we get this from the Vatican, a complete reversal of that ruling, saying that when days of holy obligation are transferred on the Church's liturgical calendar because of conflict with another feast day, like a Sunday, the ensuing obligation to go to Mass does not transfer to the new date. So it was a reversal of what was going on. I mean, it's more confusion. We're supposed to be so synodal in listening. I wonder if they consulted any parish priests who have to fight every holy day of obligation to, one, make their people aware of the obligation, and 2, then get people actually into the pews on the day of obligation. Did they ask any of them? I don't know. Probably
You're much
not.
less cynical than I am. I think priests look at it like they don't want to emphasize too much that it's a holy day of obligation, because if the people don't know, then how can it be considered morally sinful for them not to go? And they like it that they're
I'm
in
sure there are
ignorance.
priests
That's
like
my
that.
cynical take.
Yep. It's just, again,
I'm confused on all this. I know that I basically go when I'm told to go, but wouldn't it make sense for us to have clear guidance on when holy days of obligation are, and then to go on the day it actually is, instead of shifting it around for culture and convenience sake? Like, isn't it more important that we go on a holy day of obligation on the day that it is to take part in the celebration?
And I would guess,
solemnity
Pogo, that you
that
would
important
not
event for our
object to
church?
going to Mass 2 days in a row. Like, that's what, to me, I'm just like, what is the problem with going to Mass on a Monday when you went
Or
the day before,
Saturday.
or a Saturday and a Sunday? Like, this is our faith. This is the most important part of our lives. Go to Mass.
Do you think, Erica, that it's not really about whether or not we have to force people to go 2 days in a row? I think that's actually that's the extensive reason they give, but I think that's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
I think
What's
it's
the actual?
that, again, it's like Monday is the day that priests have as their day off. And it's like, now I got to have Monday where, I mean, I'm sorry, but I feel like that's the truth. And it's like, I empathize with you. On one hand, I've made clear in the LOOPcast before that, it's unfair that we sometimes assume that every priest has got to be like, a spitting image duplicate clone of, the Curia of Ars. And he's got to do confessions for 18 hours as he's eating rotten potatoes. And he's got to be, like, come on, like, give me a break. So I do feel like sometimes we ask a little bit too much of them. That is true. But the fact of the matter is the feast day important or not? Don't give me this, Monday, Saturday, get out of jail free card. That's crap. And then also, Jesus did, 40 days it's for Lent is kind of deal, and then 40 days after his resurrection, the ascension, like it's a Thursday. Make it a Thursday. Like
Yeah.
this drives me crazy.
Well, that's a case. That's a case of
and I knew
they
it would.
moved the feast to the Sunday to coincide with the Sunday instead of being like, oh my gosh, it happens to move this year to a Sunday. It's just, yeah. And of course, the frustration for me is that we have just this Jesuitical. This is Jesuitical casuistry of like, here are all the rules. We need the rules apparent when the language around this should be. These are, like you said, Josh, these are important days. The liturgical calendar supersedes the secular calendar. This is the most important thing in your life. Come to Mass. And
Well,
it's just completely missing that point.
and again, the frustration with this article here, with this news item here, is that it seems pretty obvious that Supich was like, "I'm not going to make you go," and Propaki is like, "Well, we're supposed to go, and you're going to let people know in this area that you don't have to go." So Propaki writes this. He's the bishop downstate in Illinois. He sends this letter to the Vatican, like,
The dubia, right?
"Yeah, so hey, I'm just asking here, but like, even if you move it, it's still obligatory, right?" And the Vatican's like, the one dicastery is like, "Yeah, actually, yep, it's still obligatory." And then Paprocki publishes it, lets everyone know, hey, it's still obligatory. And Supich is like, obviously annoyed. It's like, well, I'm waiving the obligation anyway, and I can do that as bishop. And he doesn't leave it at that. Now he's got to send a letter to another dicastery saying it shouldn't have to be like this. So this is all Supich just kind of doing political cover, and I hate it. It's disgusting. The fact of the matter is, look, someone is on making a big deal about this online. Like, maybe we should have more days of obligation. I'm not saying we need more. Whatever. We don't have to have more, but just stick to it. The ascension should be Thursday, Saturday, Monday. Don't give me this baloney stuff. Like, actually have it have meaning. And,
Fire me up, Josh. I agree. I have to say now, all of these. So we don't even have time for the full USCCB rant, but I was reliably informed by my own government and churches that Mass and the Eucharist were non-essential during COVID. So now it feels like all of this kind of rings a little bit hollow, and I'll never forget that. And that might have been the worst travesty of my entire
our
Catholic
church will
life.
apologize for everything else,
shut
but not
churches
that.
down doing that. Exactly. Okay. Josh.
Yeah,
thoughts
so
on you
this
first.
minister in Sweden, he's the integration minister, and he has this great idea. We should have classes that Muslim immigrants should take that will teach them that rape is wrong.
Oh,
I saw this. This isn't new.
It's like what in the world?
and why would we need these classes?
This isn't new. This isn't new, and it failed spectacularly. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure how long ago this was.
Well,
but
it's making the rounds again. But I just feel like if you really want to teach, immigrants of different cultures and faiths that rape is wrong, like, I don't know, maybe arrest them and throw them in jail or hang them high. Like, a noose will tell people, like, we take this seriously.
Right. It turns out that part of a country welcoming immigrants into its borders has to include some level of assimilation. Like, you agree with us that rape is wrong. And people say, well, you're pointing to the extreme. You're pointing to this is a very small minority of. Take a look at England, right? We have these huge pockets of whole communities that have migrated from parts of the world where child marriage as children as young as 9 years old now in the country of Iraq, that this is okay and it is accepted. And England has had decades of bringing people in and telling them, you don't have to assimilate, be yourself. Diversity is our strength. And now that the rubber hits the road and these reports come out of gang rapes and grooming young girls, it's like, maybe we should have assimilated that when it came to things like, rape. Like, it might actually matter.
And the rape gangs that were all those major cities through the United Kingdom. And
Right.
You're like, how could you allow this? Like, at least no one called me a racist.
Right.
At least no one called me a bigot.
Josh, you kind of buried the lead here. So in addition to toughening penalties, the government wants to strengthen education for new arrivals, where issues of gender equality, women's rights, and views on sexuality will be emphasized, quote, much more. The education will include mandatory tests to ensure that participants understand Sweden's, quote, liberal values according to Person. We must be clear from day one that anyone who comes here needs to support our view on women's and homosexual
Yeah.
rights.
Yeah, they're not going
They
to
got to
do
make
that.
sure they have the Black Lives Matter flag, that they consider, recycling to be an act of
Good luck with
worship.
that. Yeah, I think it's okay to admit, like, not all cultures are equal, and that some cultures produce great nations and some cultures, lead a rotten
Right.
decay.
And I actually think,
it's
Western
the
civilization, European
failed liberal
whites
consensus.
have done a pretty damn good job, thank you. And I'm not going to apologize for that. But it doesn't mean, you only like whites. Like, dude, I'd rather live next to a bunch of Koreans than a bunch of liberal white women.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, don't worry, I got some. I got some in mind.
Yeah,
All right,
so this the
Erica,
NEEP report,
your
which
thoughts?
is the nation's report card on schools, came out just this morning actually, and it is absolutely awful. I mean, we're looking at there has been no recovery since the COVID lockdowns. We have the worst 8th grade literacy rate ever recorded in our nation's history. Some groups of students made slight gains. And remember, when I say gains, we're talking about starting from negative. We're talking about, cities where 6% of the children can read at level. This is like Milwaukee, Fort Worth, Baltimore. This is absolutely dismal. So when I say gains, we're talking about maybe they got from a 2nd grade reading level to a 3rd grade. But the children who are making gains are children who are already what you would call privileged in the parlance of the day. So they're kids who are high achieving already and have access to like one-on-one tutoring. But I thought this was interesting. So this is a very, very dark report about the state of education in the United States and just basics, right? And you might remember we covered over the summer when the reports came out about COVID funding for schools being used for things like 200,000 ukuleles in the city of Detroit and things like that. And we're like, okay, blah, blah, blah. This is so dumb.
Well, did you hear about the laptops in Chicago?
Right, and the
that got found
laptops in
like 10
Chicago
different
that were
countries as well?
found in like Eastern Europe being sold on the black market.
Yeah.
But this was really interesting. There was a bright spot. 2 states were found to have made significant gains in the 4th grade level. And these are states that are consistently in my East Coast elite circles denigrated as bastions of redneck hillbillies who don't know their right from their left hand. Yes, indeed, Louisiana and Alabama made significant gains in the NEEP scores in reading and in mathematics. Why was this, you might ask? Well, Louisiana in the last 2 years has emphasized things like evidence-based, time-tested curriculum, things like phonics, and actually equipping teachers to have control of their own classrooms and freeing teachers from the standardized tests and the red tape and all that. And so I love it when the twilight zone comes for the Department of Education, that these states that you characterize as being so backward are the only states where kids are even starting to recover from what you did to them during COVID. So Department of Education put out a statement saying, this is the legacy of the Biden administration, the legacy of a Department of Education that has failed our country. We are going to turn this around. And I can't wait to see that happen. It cannot come too soon. That's me, my twilight zone. Do it.
I have 3 quick hitters. First one, Catholic moms are the most powerful force in the world. Not sure if you saw this. The guy who killed bin Laden is Catholic, and he sent out this tweet, Robert J. O'Neill. I'm a practicing Catholic and went to Catholic school my entire life. I will say the rosary every day, but will not, all caps, go to mass again or pray to church a single dime until they get rid of this communist they call, quote, the Pope. Generate some controversy, maybe tweet it out in anger, moment of anger. I don't know. But then you get the reply. I talked to my mom. I'm going back to church.
Yes. Go, Mom.
Mama O'Neill for the win.
I could just see how this conversation
right.
went.
Little St. Monica action going on there. She calls up. She's like, Bob, I got to talk to you.
Like, I've had
Bob. Robert's like, oh, sorry, Mom. You were right. Love it.
Yeah, I've had this. I can say I've had this conversation with my own mother, so I can like picture in my head so clearly exactly how this went. And I'm happy to report Catholic moms are still winning. So that's my first one. My second one is about Captain America. So to promote new film, I didn't even know they're still doing Captain
Jump in the
America.
shark, Marvel.
We get Captain America is now going to be Anthony Mackie. And so, quote from him, "For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term America should be one of those
Oh, they're doing a
representations."
comic book movie. They never do this.
You're telling me I don't even know where to go with this. So it's like, let's make Captain America, but make him communist and black.
And
I
not
don't even care
That's
representing
the approach
America.
that they're going with.
I don't care about his
Right.
color.
Yeah.
Captain America doesn't represent America. That's just like,
I don't
Oh
care
my
if Captain America is black. I just don't
Captain
want
America
Thor to
doesn't
be a
represent
girl.
America.
Like, that's
Yeah.
stupid. But
that was stupid. I
That
love
might be
Thor.
next. That might be next. So yeah, I don't even know where to go with that one. But so okay, on a personal note, shout out to my wife. She submitted this one this morning. She says, "Hey, maybe we should check out the YMCA near us. There's a new one opening." And we went over, and she pretty quickly was like, "Oh, we can't go there." And I was like, "Why can't we go to the YMCA?" So it is getting absolutely torched right now in the comments because it has a pool and there's co-ed
Oh,
locker rooms.
no. Come on, Carmel.
And the very average, like this isn't even like crazy right wing, whatever. Everyone in the comment section is like, "I'm not going here until this is changed. This is insane." Like, there's a school that utilizes this pool. You're telling me that like my little girl basically is going to be changing in a locker room with men. That's insane. And it is insane, and it will not be tolerated in the golden age of America. But I do have to say, it made me go back again. What does YMCA stand
Young
for?
men. Yeah, I
Young
sing the
Men
song
Christian
like every day.
Association.
Yeah.
Young Men's Christian Association. I'm like, it was founded in 1844 by this British dude. And he's like, "Hey, I want to put Christian values into practicing by developing a healthy body, mind, and soul." Notice, Young Men's Christian Academy.
It's a
It was
male
just
space.
for men.
Right.
A male space, which,
I'm a
again,
fan of
nothing
males
wrong
having
with
their own
this. Something that I
spaces.
actually very
Yes.
much
It
desire.
did get weird until the gays made
To
it their
develop
song in the
masculine
70s,
virtue.
because that's where they're, yeah.
All right. So I was like, when did all this start changing? So apparently in the 1980s, they started making co-ed facilities, programs designed for both genders, even though some branches might maintain separate areas for church activities, whatever, or men and women activities. Now it's just full-throated 2010s and beyond. The YMCA has explicitly embraced diversity, equity, and inclusion in its mission statements and program offerings, which might be seen by some as an organization going woke. And yeah, I would say so. Co-ed bathrooms is like, could you imagine in 1844, like this Christian dude in Britain's like, "Yes, we're gonna develop the men," and then like you had to tell him like, "Yeah, men and women are
the
gonna be changing in the same
institutions
locker
came for the
rooms," you know?
YMCA as well. It's part of that whole progressive arc of history.
Yeah, well, interestingly, I looked up 1970s. You get Title IX in the U.S. 1972, which prohibited sex discrimination in any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So again, part of what we talked about in the beginning of this episode about pausing some of this stuff. Yeah, I'd like to see
I'd
a
like to
pause
see
at YMCA. Are you
lawsuits.
kidding me? Like
Yeah.
this is going to be,
But also,
yeah, like
by
this
the
is.
way, you ever
insane.
notice it's only men, some men, that want to go into the bathrooms that have young girls. You don't see women clamoring to go in men's bathrooms. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
They're gross.
yeah, because it's a sexual thing for these people. Like, again, I guess I would ask, like, for these men that want to be transgender, identify as a woman, why don't you just wear the same clothing? I mean, like 90% of women, I mean, like, it just kind of drives me crazy. Like, just dress like a lesbian and no one will care. I mean, but you got to put on the weird makeup and wear high heels. Okay. It's all cosplay.
Josh, we're in the golden age of America. This will not be tolerated. YMCA, we're taking it back. It's going to become Young Men's Christian Academy again, and it's going to develop association, whatever. Doesn't matter.
But the point I would say is
I will
that
rename it.
was O'Sullivan's Law. My friend Barry will text me afterwards and remind me what it is. But any organization that does not have an explicit conservative or Christian charter with, that spells out exactly what they believe, it will eventually just drift to the left.
This is true.
Like, that's what happened to the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts,
But they did.
right? We talk about everything that they have. Oh, they have, not only have gay scoutmasters, but they have like girls can be Boy Scouts. Now they're not Boy Scouts; it's just Scouts. Like they fought all the way to the United States Supreme Court in 1999 and won for the ability to say we're not going to have men who are attracted to other men be Boy Scout leaders. Like, hello, in pub tents with little boys? No way. And it didn't take long for the corporations who sponsored the Cub Scouts to go, no, you need to take our money and you need to give up on this. So they win the battle and then they raise the white flag anyway, or rainbow flag, as it were.
Freeze the funds. I say we freeze the funds, but this was a good episode. Got a lot in here today. One thing you can do to help us out, just go ahead and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're at. Subscribe on YouTube, leave a like, share us around if you like what we're doing here. Support Charity Mobile. Shout out to them, sponsor. You can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. But the biggest thing you do is pray for us. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us, and we'll see you guys on the